Hi everyone, this is Kelly from The Truth in Story, and today I'm going to do a walkthrough and a bit of a review of the Deviant Moon Tarot, and I have here the borderless edition. Now this has been one of my most requested walkthroughs and I did do a first impressions walkthrough of it, but I ended up scrapping it and decided to start fresh after having worked with it for a little while. Not because it was it really wasn't. It was simply that I kept saying the same thing over and over again. Okay, this is very interesting and I get it, but okay. You know, it was kind of a lot, I just felt it was very repetitious. And so I thought, you know what, in order to give this a fair shake and to really give my impression on the deck, I need to do a little bit of work with it before hand so that I actually have something to say about it. So that's what I did, and so here we can see I went ahead and laid the aces out. I actually quite like the aces. This is one of my favorite images in the deck. I also quite love this one. These two are quite beautiful. So I laid those out. Let's see here. Let me grab. I generally use a Tarot of the Hidden Realm card. This is the lovely Queen of Swords. That's my card. For a comparison of size. So we can see that they're quite tall and skinny. So there's the typical Llewellyn size. It's quite a good chunk taller and it's a little bit thinner. You wouldn't seem like that's very much, but it does make quite a difference and it does feel quite thin in the hand. So it is an interesting size deck. I do quite like it looks neat. It feels nice. I don't mind that. The cardstock is quite nice actually. This is a US Game Systems 2013 and it's a nice cardstock. It's thicker than a Llewellyn. Now, you know I like Llewellyn. This is a little bit thicker than a Llewellyn. It feels quite nice. And this is the backing, which is gorgeous. I mean, I wouldn't want to have had to trim that because the back is so gorgeous the way it is. So I quite like the backing on it. And so that's the size, that's the backing. This came with just a little tuck box, typical, nothing to write home about. Decently, you know, sturdy. It's not as bad as some. Everything stays sealed up. I don't like tuck boxes that don't that kind of flop open all the time. Like my Heindel Tarot is the absolute worst. But this is a nice tuck box, and it came with a little white book. Now, the little white book goes into the creation, and he talks about how the symbolism came from childhood dreams and imagination that he had as a child and has come with him over into adulthood. It also talks about how it took 3 years, but in truth it took 30 years because of all the symbolism, you know, has been kind of brewing over his lifetime. And then it goes into the card. So we have a little bit of a description of the card, then an upright and a reversed meaning. So we have about 3-ish per page of the major, and same thing with the minor, some more than others. And so we have that going all the way through. I'll read a couple of them so that you can see how the text is. And then it goes into the Lunatic spread, which is a round 9-card spread like this, which is actually quite interesting. I've done a few of these. And then that is the extent. It is a total of 41 pages here. So, you know, it's better than some. For a deck like this that is so distinctive and so different, I do think that it could have benefited from a larger guidebook. And there is a hardback book that has come out just recently that I think is a larger guidebook, as well as a, you know, making of and kind of seeing the progression of the art, going into the art. You know, it's kind of more like a coffee table book, I think, than strictly a guidebook. There are reviews out there on YouTube with My little candle's having a problem here. It's getting drowned in its own wax. We'll see if that helps it. But yes, there are, I know that there are a couple of videos out there on the book itself. That's not something I was interested in because I really didn't think that this would be a deck that I would be needing that much information on. I didn't anticipate keeping this, to be quite honest with you, although I was going to give it a fair shot. But my anticipation was that probably it was going to move on. So there we have it. So that's the guidebook. But let's just see at least a couple of these, just so you can get a feel for what information is given. So for example, here's the Fool card. Unaware of his surroundings, the fool begins his journey by wandering into the canal. He has no experience of life, therefore he has no fear of it. Upright meanings, the beginning of a journey, innocent or young person, folly, acting without thought, potential. And then the reverse meanings are failure to seize the moment, unsure actions, and uncertainty. So fairly typical, I mean fairly Rider-Waite-Smith style. Here we have the Magician. Blessed with a great talent, the magician performs skillfully. Although he has only begun to learn his craft, he is already gifted. Upright meanings, putting creativity to use, exploring one's potential abilities, manual dexterity, skilled hands, and emerging talent. That's a little bit different. My typical reading of the magician is that he has everything that he needs within himself, and that ability to manifest from the kind of spirit into reality, which I'm not, you don't really hear that here. Reverse meaning, putting one's gift to ill use, a lack of imagination, confusion, uncoordinated efforts, and unable to learn new skills. So here I'll do one more just so you can get a good feel for this. Here we have the High Priestess, sits as a winged sentinel over the city. So this is a little bit different than a typical one. She protects the knowledge she holds inside, for wisdom must be earned through the trials of life. Upright meaning is supreme knowledge, intuition, a woman wise beyond her years, virtuous and scholarly. I've not really thought of virtuousness as being acquainted with the High Priestess, but that was interesting. Upright meanings, I said that. Reverse meanings, ignorance, lack of vision, and holding back true feelings. To me, this is quite a different look at the High Priestess. And this one highlights, I think, even more. Like for me, this is the Fool. I see the Fool in this. I read the Fool in this. It doesn't... I don't have any issues with that. This one is interesting. I like the multiple arms because we do have 4 arms for the 4 elements. We have an actual item in, and he's sticking his finger and blood in there, but we do have for the 4 items that we see, at least the 4 element represented there, so that to me works. I do quite like actually the shadow here. It's quite interesting because it puts a little bit more of the magician on display, or a little bit more like the Marseille magician, whereas like a street magician who's actually out performing. So that's quite interesting, and I like that. Or, you know, it's interesting to me. And interesting is definitely a word I'm going to overuse in this video, because that's what I feel about this deck. I feel like it's interesting, it's thought-provoking. It just doesn't, to be honest, up at the very up front, it doesn't really speak to me. I get it. I can sense that it's quite powerful. I don't have any issue reading with it, but it just doesn't have that connection for me that I was kind of hoping might happen when I actually got it in hand. The High Priestess, I think it's just, I love the split faces on here. And some of them go like this, where there are very few that are completely open, like the Fool's feels. Some move to the side where we only see the bony structure, half of the face, and some are split like this, and the shadowed side is always looking down. So example, you can see that in this Ace of Wands as well, and you can see that here in the Ace of Swords, that when you can see both sides, the shadowed side is always looking down or closed, I suppose it truly is, and looking inward. So I do really like that aspect of looking inward and looking outward. But she just seems very defensive here. It's just, the face looks very terrified. It's just not what I think of as the High Priestess, because the image that I get from this, even though that's not the case, because you can read it and it doesn't say anything about that. It says that she's a sentinel over the city, and she is protecting the knowledge that is inside of her. But it seems more fearful than, that's just the energy that I get from it, which is a very different energy than I think of with the High Priestess. Again, this is just my personal reaction to it. This just doesn't do it for me personally as a High Priestess, but I get what they're doing. I like that the knowledge is inside of herself. I just don't generally think of the High Priestess as protecting the knowledge inside of her, more so as going in and getting it and pulling it up and outward for view. So this kind of idea of holding it inside, to me, is kind of anti-High Priestess energy. But that's, again, me personally. Everything that I'm going to say, obviously, is me personally. So, but I just did those three right away, just so you could kind of get a feel for the guidebook. I did find it to be useful if I was trying to figure out where it was going with particular. It was enough to give me an idea of where they were going, or where the author Patrick Valenza was going with the card. And so I did think it was useful in that sense. Although I personally don't think they're very hard. They're very expressive cards. So it's not difficult to know what exactly is going on in the particular card, I don't feel. So I'm going to go ahead, I did, you know how I like to see the aces, I went ahead and did them at the front just because. So you can see the aces here. There are cups and swords and pentacles and wands, so fairly traditional there. And the same thing with the courts. We have pages, knights, queens, and kings. So again, quite traditional there. I want to say all of the titles have stayed the same. Strength is 11 and justice is 8, so it's along the Thoth and the Marseille type. And I believe death, oops. Yes, death is unnamed, like the Marseille decks. So other than that, though, the names and the titles are all traditional. So that I did want to point that out. So I'm going to go ahead, let me put these back the way I like them. Swords, wands, pentacles, and cups. And then I'll go ahead and zoom in on the cards, the rest of the cards, since we already did 3 of them, so that you can see them better as we walk through these. I zoomed in a little too close. There we go. Okay, so we checked out the Fool, the Magician, the Priestess. Here we have the Empress. I do like that she has 4 breasts. Well, I mean, we can only see 3, but I'm assuming there is a 3rd one there. So I do, or 4th one, I'm sorry. I do like that sense of abundance and being able to feed and nurture abundantly is certainly implied there. You know, she's definitely out in a garden. The High Priestess, the Empress, the Emperor, and the Hierophant are all with these checkerboards on the floors, which is something I have seen in other places, and I cannot tell you exactly where, but I do like that kind of tying together of almost like the royalty factor. So we have that connection that's going on there. We can also see that they are looking at each other. The Empress, their backs are to each other, but they're looking towards each other, which is also interesting. Kind of mirrored. We have this hand holding the scepter, whereas this hand is holding up this plant, which is growing out of her back, which we'll talk about more in a minute. But so I do like that mirroring there. She's got like a plant that is growing from her and entwining around her and blooming. So we certainly have that sense of creation and abundance and connection to nature. I don't feel it particularly nurturing to me, just because, again, of the strange and the boniness and that kind of thing. I don't feel the sense of lushness, but this is Deviant Moon. So, this is a little bit, obviously, supposed to be enshadowed. And that's a part of the issue, I guess, that I have felt overall with this deck. While I know that many people read this across the board, not just in shadow, I would have, because of a few cards in particular, I would have a really difficult time reading this unless I was using it for shadow work, using it kind of to look at what's going on underneath in a sense of shadow and for some things. And so that limits its use for me personally. So there we have that one. Here we have the Emperor, as I showed. Same kind of bony feet as we had. Again, we have the mirroring where they're kind of matching and looking at each other. We do have the moon reflected in his scepter, although the other end is on a little, poor little devil cow of some size type, a little devil animal, and it's right through him, which, I mean, I get, and his foot's on it, so we certainly have that sense of dominion over animals, but it's not, to me, a bringing into balance or bringing, and I know domination is part of the Emperor in terms of we often see the chain of mail on him, and it's part of the way in which he has had successful conquering, but it's just, again, not entirely how I read the Emperor, and it reminds me, I think, of the Fairy Lights Tarot Emperor as well, and there's a couple other where there's just pure domination, and that's just kind of, I don't know, it's not my idea of the Emperor in light. So here we have the Hierophant, and he is, again, a mirror of her. They do look at each other if you put them this way. They're both seated on the same stool. They both have the wings that are there. So we do have that sense there. I like this little guy in his pocket. They both have, half and half their faces showing, so they show going inward versus the Emperor and the Empress, which we're just seeing the masks there. So we do have that sense of kind of going inward and outward. I really like to look at the way in which the faces are being presented, whether they're that flat playing card, which he does talk about, so as part of the artwork was to be that sort of flattened playing card style, where it almost looks like they're flattened onto the page, so to speak, versus some that are more 3D and more outward, or maybe 2D. I'm not sure what you would say about that. We have his hands in supplication here, and he's praying for the souls of the city. But it does talk about religion holds a man like a doll in its pocket. So that's quite interesting. So there we have those. I actually quite like the Lover's card. I think it's lovely. I think she's beautiful. I love the dark and the light, the black skin and the white skin, creating sort of the dichotomy that we see in the face here, in the two bodies. So I think that that's quite lovely. This does have it as being love, passion, romance, harmony, less to do about kind of the choice idea that I have of making a choice, and also the idea of the conscious subconscious, and although I guess you could use the divine or the divine or the higher self with the moon energy there. You can also see a lot of times you see the moon starting blowing down and having an effect on the card below it. Not all of them. This is the first one that we see. Sometimes I think that makes a lot of sense, and sometimes it changes the meaning a bit for me, especially I want to say it was in the Eight of Swords. Or even the Nine of Swords. One of the swords, I didn't like how it changed the meaning of the card, but it's interesting to watch when the moon is affecting the people in the card. But I do think that's a lovely card. The Chariot to me is funny. I mean, but you know, the truth of the matter is, in a typical Rider-Waite-Smith, I look at the Chariot card and I think, you know, they're just so plocked down there, these big solid things that don't look like they can actually be moved. That's kind of what I feel about this one, is that he doesn't look like he's going to go very fast. But, you know, there's no horses pulling. It's all by his will and steam power from his actual brain. You can see in the background we do have kind of smokestacks and things going on, like a factory town. This is definitely that style of a world. This isn't generally a lush, abundant world that these moon people are on. Here we have Justice. Again, we've got the split face, the looking inward and outward. We have the two swords of truth here. We don't have a scale so much. We do have keys that are right here. She's just basically balancing the swords themselves. And it does really talk about corruption, because it says even though she's seemingly fair, corruption does seep into society. And so she has to keep things in balance. And you can see her leg has grasped this creature down here, I guess, who is trying to creep under her skirts. I don't know. This is one of the cards that really would probably stop me from using this deck it's totally personal. I know this is going to be the most unpopular video I've ever made, and I'll probably get lots of thumbs downs. But you know, I've got to be honest here. The Hermit's an important card for me. It's one of my significator cards. Like if I pick a significator for myself, it's often going to be the Hermit. And this one is just a hiding, scared hermit. And again, I don't mind a card being in shadow, but this is in shadow in the upright position. Like there's no way to me, in my opinion, to look at this card and see the hermit in its traditional light or upright position. Because even though the upright meaning in the Little White Book says solitude, exile, one who seeks to be alone, an outcast, hidden knowledge, and secrecy. I mean, in my opinion, this hermit just looks scared. It looks like he's hiding in a tunnel somewhere, and he looks terrified. I just don't see the upright version of the Hermit in this card for me. And because I identify so strongly with this card, for me this would only be my Hermit in shadow. And I don't really want, if I'm doing a regular reading, I don't want every time the Hermit comes up, the Hermit to be in shadow. So this is a problem card for me personally. Here we have the Wheel of Fortune, you know, pretty typical. I do like the little insignias that are on there. I do quite like the little masked demon-y guy, monkey in a devil suit that's like he's playing drums. We have the fortune, kind of a gypsy fortune teller, I guess, that is turning the wheel for this person who's come to get their fortune. You know, it's his fortune. It's funny. The deck does have a sense of humor in many, many ways. Here we have the Strength card again. I do have an issue with these types of Strength cards. It's just a personal thing. Strength is one of my favorite cards, and you know, there's just no way to read this other than that sort of more physical. And it even says, incredible strength imposes his will on a wild beast. And that's not my idea of the strength card. So this is similar again to the Fairy Lights Tarot, where the strength card in there, I couldn't get around the strength card in there. And this has that same feel for it. It talks about power and strength from within, but it's not, this isn't the kind of strength that I see as is the strength card. Again, it is traditional. You will see Marseille decks like this. You will see this is a traditional style where that kind of wrestling the beast does come in, but that's a difficult one for me. So here we have the Hanged Man, which is quite, atypical. Even the Jester costume, you see quite a lot in Hanged Man. I do like the watch that's hanging on his boot, so I quite like that. And so it's a death card. It's a Hanged Man card. This is the Death card. Now this is, I know a lot of people find this particular image to be disturbing, and I do too. I mean, it's certainly a very powerful Death card, but I actually think it's again quite powerful because we have what's essentially, when you read the guidebook, we have the ship going down, number one. But we think, okay, well, I don't see the new dawning of the new day, which is actually here. This is a dead creature. Both the child and the mother are actually dead according to this guidebook. They are corpses. And the little one would like to crawl back up because it wants to be reborn, but it's not this time. She's going to give birth to new life, and their time is already passed. So, I mean, it's definitely a very powerful image, but I think that I think Death is a powerful card, and that's quite interesting. I can't say I like it because it's a harsh card, but I think it's beautifully done and it's very powerful. I quite like the Temperance card. We have pretty typical. She's at the space between water and land. She's obviously got wings like an angel. She's got the two things she's pouring into. So for me, it's quite a traditional Temperance card for a moon creature, but it's quite lovely. The Devil he's quite cute, in a gnarly, typical kind of devil. He's dancing in delight over the havoc he's caused. You don't really get the idea of bondage here, other than he's kind of dancing about here, and their idea of he was once, you should remember that he was once beautiful, and this is what he's turned into because of giving over to havoc and that kind of thing. But you certainly don't get the bondage sense in this particular image, in my opinion. Here we have the Tower card. I quite love this. It makes me think of sort of like a Dalek from Doctor Who, with the kind of stalk-eyed beaming down and nailing the, destroying the top of the tower. I quite like that. But other than that, it's a pretty typical Tower card. Here we have the Star card. Again, pretty Rider-Waite-Smith. We have the stars here. We have her pouring water out. She's actually quite lush, figuratively. Like, I would have thought, truthfully, that the Empress would have been more rounded like this, just because of that sense of abundance, and almost giving birth sense. I feel like her body should have been for the Empress card, but that's just my opinion. But other than that, I mean, other than really needing a manicure, because let's just be realistic here. This little star angel really needs a manicure. So, here we have the Moon card, which is, I actually like this moon face. I don't generally like faces and moons. I think that's pretty cool. We definitely have, again, the moon causing energy is coming out from the moon and creating, and it's puppeting the people that it is attached to, which is, I think, more of a devil kind of card than anything. But it's controlling the minds like a puppeteer. And the upright meaning of the moon in this is brainwashing, dark influences, trickery, illusion, and subconscious control. The reversed meaning is avoiding reality, strange forces, delusional thoughts, lies, and despair. So there's just no positive meaning to this moon card whatsoever. And that's another example, I guess, with the Hermit card, is that it completely takes away some of how I do see the moon card to be, which I do find to be, yes, things are in half light, yes, things can be exaggerated, yes, it's about digging deep and fixing our shadow selves, but this kind of mind control and trickery and this, and both upright and reverse being both negative, is simply not how I personally see the moon, which is fine. But again, if I was just reading in a regular reading, not shadow work, there's no room in this to read it not in shadow. And so that's, for me, creates an unbalance in the dark way. Many decks err on the side of, I think, going unbalanced into the light. This to me goes unbalanced a bit into the shadow, and so that would make it one that I would only use for shadowy type work. And even in that case, when I'm doing shadow work, I still want there to be light. So again, it's very personal, but this card is quite problematic for me. Here we have the Sun card, which is, again, I really actually like the faces in the Sun and the Moon. I think they're really cool. I actually think they're powerful, and they're probably the only suns and faces and moons that I actually quite like. I also like that we have, adult individuals here. They're being united into a single soul. I don't think of the sun as to do with friendships and things like that, but it definitely has a sense of happiness and things like that. So it works as a sun card. Here we have the Judgment card. Pretty atypical, other than obviously, strange looking angel at the top. But other than that, it's pretty Rider-Waite-Smith Judgment card. Something that I often try to avoid in decks. Here we have the Judgment card. Here we have the World card, and we have a young mermaid here. We have fish with faces, and we have creatures. So we do have like 4 creatures here. It's a successful. You can see the traditional imagery even in the snake or the Ouroboros here that's eating its tail instead of the laurel leaves that you normally have, but you certainly can see the World card in this. So there we have the major arcana. And so, again, I find it to be interesting. I'm glad that I had a chance to take a look at it. There's some that I really do like. This one gives me the giggles. I really like the looking at when you can see the masks and when you can't see the both sides. Like this side, he's unmasked, which is quite interesting. And so those kinds of, and see, this even almost has the eye of the mask, which does kind of show it as possibly being his other self. The only issue is that he's dominating his other self. He's not bringing it into balance, as I see the Strength card. Now, again, that's just me. Again, quite powerful. I like this for its power. But just, I do have problems with the Moon. I have problems with the Hermit, those in particular. But I think it's beautifully done for what it is. The artwork simply isn't, but look at the coloration. It's actually very muted, right, and very dark, but if you just fan it, it's got beautiful tones. It's got a very beautiful antique-y yellows and golds and greens and browns that is quite lovely for what it is. It just doesn't really speak that much to me, personally. Now, I had a lot more, I liked a lot more of the minor cards than I did the major cards. Which is surprising. I'm going to try to pick it up the pace a little bit because I know I'm mostly going to be saying I find this to be really interesting. But, so here we have the Ace of Swords. I really like the two, because there's this decision, but it's like an internal conflict going on. I really like that. That's pretty cool. Here we have the Three of Swords. Again, very traditional in its, she's got 3 legs here, which is quite cool. I always talk about the 3-legged stool for 3s, and we actually have a 3-legged person. She's obviously been hurt, heartbreak. She's got the tear, it works very well. I love this Four of Swords. I think this is fantastic. She's taking a rest. She's actually gone underground to kind of heal and recover before coming back up into the world. I think that's beautiful. Don't like him really. I mean, he has his funny, he's sticking his tongue out. He's a little bit of a saucy in his little butt cheeks here. He's a little saucy there, but it just doesn't do anything for me. I mean, you get the idea. There's definitely they're raising the surrender, you know. So there is that winning that's been tinted by this bad attitude. So it works. It's just not my favorite. I love floating ships. This one is a little hilarious because his head is the balloon. Again, it really does. I love her face, and I love the air balloon. That's, of course, strange, but this is supposed to be a strange deck, and they are moving away. So this one really works. I love her face. I wish there was a normal person sitting in this particular balloon. Here we have the Seven of Swords, which is quite precarious. I don't really think of the Seven of Swords as being quite as precarious, but he is definitely taking a risk, which is what that generally means to me, so that works. Yeah, so this is the Eight of Swords. You know the swords are my favorites. The Eight of Swords are, you know, that's one of my favorite cards as well. And it says, bound by the trance of sleep, a woman is beckoned by the deviant moon. 8 swords threaten her from below as she is pulled from her window. The moon's influence over her dreams will soon come to an end, for daybreak is near. So I don't know, I guess I don't see, because I see very much the swords as being about our own mind. And so when we have the moon literally influencing them, and it's about bondage, being controlled by outside forces, censorship, restriction, which is true. I mean, I guess that's all true in the Eight of Swords. I don't know. There's just something about this, although I think it's pretty cool looking, this doesn't set right with me, and I can't exactly tell you why. I guess because of the moon's influence in such a negative way. And I know it's his deviant moon, so that's the point, but I'm so strongly connected with the moon. I love the moon so much that I just can't get on board entirely with this. I'm sorry. I do feel terrible because I know many people really want me to love this. Here we have the Nine of Swords, which I think is hilarious. It works perfectly. I love this little guy on the shoulders, trumping on the shoulder there, the devil on the shoulder, although he looks like he's a little scared too. 10 of Swords is quite interesting. You have all these swords, you know, they're obviously in a box. This is my worst nightmare, which I suppose works as the 10 of Swords. So, I mean, it's very powerful. I think that's quite well done, actually. And then here we have the Page of Swords with its eye lighting the way, going forward. Quite interesting. The Knight is on a horse, a demon-y horse, movement forward. The Queen of Swords with her bloody swords. I don't quite get her as being robust and the Empress not, but you know, what can we say? And then the King of Swords with his little minion. So there we have that. This is truthfully one of my favorite images in the deck. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. This is the Ace of Wands. I just love it. Here we have the Two of Wands digging a hole with, you know, he's pulling it apart in order to make a pathway through the ground to China, I suppose. Here we have, I think this is quite lovely too. I like the Pentacle suit, actually. There's the Three of Pentacles, the Four of Pentacles. Now, who doesn't want to live in that? I want to live there. Or not Pentacles. I keep saying Pentacles. This is the Wand suit. Sorry, Three of Wands. Four of Wands. Five of Wands. I mean, this is Discord. The Six of Wands, we see... You see that image a lot. It's not on this box, but you do see that image a lot. I think it might be on the first edition that's not the borderless, perhaps, because I associate that a lot. So we have the Six is victory. Here we have the Seven of Wands running off. He's been lost for several days. She finally discovers a path that she can get through, beating the odds, victory over all competition, and winning a fight or struggle. So it's that kind of breaking through this kind of branches after having been lost. The Eight of Wands. She is going to be cutting these things down, which is quite interesting. She's getting a message there. So we do have the news being shown here, but actually the eighth wand is going to cut down. It's not, I don't know, I guess I just don't see this so much. Or yes, we have the message there, but you don't get the movement of the Eight of Wands. The Nine of Wands, this is very Nine of Wands. He looks like he's tired. He looks like he's worn out. He just needs to do that last push. And then we have the Ten of Wands balancing all those. Very funny little creature here. Page of Wands balancing on his storks, balancing on his, what are those called? Stilts. My aunt used to have them. We used to do these all the time. They're quite more difficult to do than you would think. The Knight of Wands on his bug, and he is a partial bug. He almost looks like he's connected to. It's like it's almost a symbiotic relationship here. We have a very shamanistic Queen of Wands, so that's quite, I do think that's quite a powerful Queen of Wands. The King of Wands with his children all around him. And then we have the Ace of Pentacles with a dragon. The Two of Pentacles as a belly dancer, balancing her two pentacles. I do quite like this one. I really like her. I think she's just awesome with her little round face. But they're all like doing their artistry on each other. Here we have the Four, definitely a greedy Four. She could use a little food. He is like holding on to that wealth there. And again, you know, there's, I'm sure, more in the cards, but this is quite interesting. She's out here. She's in need of help. She's coming to go get help here. We have the typical, I always like there to be another person in the Five of Pentacles, but I do quite like these roundy faces. Here we have the Six of Pentacles where we're deciding what to give. So he is going to give, but he's got all these also to give. But, yeah. I know. Everybody's going to be so disappointed. It's like, I get it. I think that it all makes sense. It's just, it just doesn't really speak to me. It just doesn't fire me up. Like, I know it does many, many people. Here we have the Seven of Pentacles. The Eight of Pentacles, hard at work in the factory. I do think that's quite cool. Very steampunky. This little Nine of Pentacles with her little wheel boot there and absolutely no arms is quite interesting. Let's just see why this little person does not have an arms. She's an affluent woman, strolls through the city accompanied by her small pet right here. Nine Pentacles glide down from the sky encircling her, showing, oh, she's wealthy, and her fancy wheel boots. I don't know what to tell you. And this one also, I just don't like this one either. This is the Ten of Pentacles. So the Ten of Pentacles is generally about family, values, tradition, wealthy fathers teaching his child's chess and such. Yeah, but look who's holding up the board is a servant. That's just kind of under there. So their wealth in their prosperity is built on the backs of something. And so to me, that's really the Ten of Pentacles in shadow upright. Here we have the Page of Pentacles. I quite like the big wrench there. The Knight of Pentacles. The Queen of Pentacles. I love these little children down here. And the robust King of Pentacles. I quite love the Ace of Cups. The Two of Cups is quite lovely as well. You have Death, who's making a match, which is quite lovely. The Three of Cups celebrating. I just keep thinking of the Men in the Tub nursery rhyme, 3 men in a tub, or I don't even know how it goes. There's something about that, but they're celebrating getting out of the mouth of the fish. The Four of Cups, typical dissatisfaction, just kind of bored with life. This hard way to read this is anything but boredom, and I don't generally read the Four of Cups quite that way, but this is very, very traditional. The poor Five of Cups is being harangued by his wife here. Clearly they have had quite difficult, and I suppose that we have the rose over here and the wine cup spilled, so I suppose he is mourning the loss of the romance that they had at the beginning of their relationship, because clearly not anymore. Here we have the Six of Cups with children and a puppet show. The Seven of Cups, the Eight of Cups. This is interesting because normally you have them choosing something out of the cup. Some of these cups are empty, some are knocked over. So this is a little bit outside of what is a normal. He struggles to depict them on canvas. So he's trying to depict the cups on canvas, but clearly it's not painting that. He interprets his subject with imagination and skill. I don't know. I'm not really seeing that. Here we have the Eight of Cups. She's abandoning her old ways and leaving. We have the Nine of Cups here, who is getting a genie in the bottle. He's going to get success, because, although that's not guaranteed, because generally genie stories do not end up well. Here we have the happiness of the Ten of Cups. I love this little one right here. And then we have the Page of Cups with the fish head. The Knight of Cups, who is part sea monster. The Queen of Cups with a leaky cup. And the King of Cups. So there we have, oops, I got these all on a whack here, but here we have all of the cards. So I know I've greatly disappointed many people who were just hoping that I would be absolutely in love with this deck, but it just wasn't meant to be so. I quite like the cards. They are quite tall, so I have quite long fingers, and it's a bit of a stretch, but they do shuffle nice. For sure. They do feel, they're a little awkward because they're longer, but that's something that you would get used to. I think the card's quality is really nice. I think that they're beautiful just to look at, just in terms of I really like the color tones, although I don't think it like pops elements or anything like that. There's a lot of little things to look at, like the different phases that the moon are in and where they are on the cards. Again, watching the faces and whether you're seeing it full on sideways. Are you seeing the open side, or are you seeing the masked side? What is the moon doing? Is the moon influencing the scene or not influencing the scene? There's a lot of details to be found in this deck that I think I can understand why people love it. I really do. I understand why this is as popular it is. The art is done beautifully if this is your style of art. But it's quite well rendered. So I do get why this is very popular. I get why people really love this deck. It just simply, there's some cards that are problematic to me that are important, and it also just doesn't really speak to me. It doesn't say pull me out and use me, other than for shadow work. And then even when I'm doing shadow work, I don't want something slanted to shadow, because I feel like then I'm just going to get a shadowy message. However, I do know people that I quite, have a strong relationship with or know their kind of situation and things, that use this for shadow work and for healing in a way that is extremely powerful, which is why, see, I hate these kind of boxes because I'm always so afraid I'm going to bend the card in there. That uses an amazing way for inner child work. That's why I got this to give it a try. It's just not a deck that I'm going to use. I've actually already traded it to somebody once I was done with it. I've already got a trade set up for it, and it will be going off to her. But I'm glad I got to take a look at it, because I would always wonder if this was a deck for me. And you know, I have traded decks, and they've come back to me and said, you know what, I need you to work with it. I don't have that feeling with this one. I get it. I respect it. I think the artist is fantastic. I like the cardstock. I think it's interesting. There's a lot to be done with this. I think this is a deck that somebody could really sink in with and do a lot of work with. It's just not for me. So there we have a look at the Deviant Moon Tarot. And I could have just done a walkthrough, but people generally are watching mine because they just want to see what I think about it. I think that if you enjoy this artwork, if this speaks to you, that this is well worth getting, because I do think it's so incredibly well done. So it just, whether or not the images speak to you, I knew that they didn't speak to me, but I wanted to try it out anyways because everybody wanted to know what I would think of this deck. So I'm sure I have lost mucho brownie points with many people, but I hope they will be able to survive this encounter. See you later.